Hi, I'm Silverpaw, and today I'm bringing you Chapter 9 of Detention, a Kingdom Hearts fan fiction. Now, before we get started, I just want to remind you guys that if you like the video, leave a like. If you dislike the video, leave a dislike. All of them help out the channel either way. Anyways, let's get started. The first thing he noticed was a gigantic chandelier made of crystal and holding real candles, all unlit. As Roxas stared, they all lit up at the same moment, almost blinding him in his shock. Axel shot him a look out of the corner of his eye, and Roxas realized he was the reason behind the pyrotechnics. Apparently, he could suspend fire farther away than just his own body. The room was huge, the walls lined with priceless paintings, and there was even a suit of armor in one corner. Off to one side was a pair of double doors, through which a maid with a tray appeared. Roxas assumed it led to the kitchen. In the direct center of the room was a big, beautiful table made of dark-colored wood and covered with a white lace tablecloth. Roxas was immediately self-conscious and nervous. He'd never dealt with such splendor before, and he wasn't exactly sure how he would act. He didn't really have a chance to warn Axel or anything, as the redhead was already setting off towards the table. He walked quickly to catch up, assessing the people at the table. The man sitting at the head of the table was tall, even sitting down, and it was quite obvious where Axel had gotten his height. He had short, gray hair and sat regally and straight in his chair, regarding Axel with a look that Roxas didn't really understand. To his right was a small woman with crimson hair, the same as Axel's. Her eyes were trained on the tablecloth, and a soft smile rested on her lips, as if it were a permanent accessory. Next to her sat a girl with deeper red hair, more like wine than Axel's shocking crimson. She had big blue eyes and was slightly amused look on her face, as if she knew something the rest of the world didn't. Sitting at the opposite end of the table was a male that looked astoundingly like Axel. He wore his hair long, held back in a loose ponytail, his long bangs hanging in his face. His eyes were the same blue as Kyrie's, and Roxas found himself wondering where Axel's vivid green came from. Under his eyes he too had tattoos, though his were red swooshes instead of black diamonds. Hey guys, Axel greeted with a wave, directing Roxas around the table, taking the seat to the left of his father. Roxas took the final chair between Axel and who he assumed was Reno, aware that every eye was on him. This is Roxas. Roxas, this is my family. He received a murmured greeting and gave one in return. They were quiet for a moment, and Roxas felt extremely awkward before Axel's dad spoke up. Boys, I really must protest about this hair. I understand a little teenage rebellion, but this is really getting out of hand. You've already ruined any chance at having a professional facade with those damn tattoos on your faces. Roxas suspected the conversation happened often by the way Axel rolled his eyes, and Reno leaned back in his chair and sighed. Dad, I'm already set for life. I don't see why it matters what I look like. Reno, I hardly think working as a thug doing Rufus Shinra's dirty work is being, as so you put it, set for life. Honestly, how far do you really think that's going to take you? It's his life, Dad, Axel cut in. Let him live it the way he wants to. The brothers shared a brief look, almost as if they were communicating through it. Roxas had seen Sora and Namine do it too many times before, and he wondered exactly how close Axel and Reno were. Axel, I don't believe I was talking to you. You will remain silent and not speak unless spoken to. Is that understood? Axel gave a sharp nod and stabbed his fork petulantly into a steak a maid had just placed before him. Answer me, Alex. Yes, sir, Axel ground out, not looking away from his plate. Roxas, feeling awkward and out of place, stared straight ahead. The rest of dinner passed very much with the same, and Roxas found himself almost relieved when it was over. No one at the table dared to speak against Axel's father, but they made it through dinner unscathed. About an hour after they had arrived, Roxas was more full than he'd ever been in his life, and Axel managed to make his escape. He led Roxas out of the room, up a staircase, and down a few hallways before opening a door and ushering him inside. The room was huge, bigger than Roxas's and Namine's rooms combined. The walls were painted a brilliant red color with white trim. A king-size bed was pushed against one wall, done up with black sheets and a red and black checkered quilt with band logos sewn on. Black lights and lights shaped like spiders were wrapped along the headboard, plugged in so they cast a small amount of light around. Directly next to the door was a black desk with a laptop sitting on it and a desk lamp and alarm clock on either side of it. The shelf sitting above it had a complicated-looking stereo system that was connected to 4 different speakers. CDs were shelved between the speakers. Across the room from the desk was a gigantic trunk set under the window with a black pillow top spread across it, to make it look like a window seat. Next to that was a gigantic white bookcase that took up the rest of the wall, stuffed with books and knickknacks of every sort. Varied band posters were spread across the room, and only part of the closet door that could be seen was the doorknob, due to the rest of it being covered in a collage of pictures. The floor was covered in a plush black carpet. Roxas suspected that if he were to lie on it, the carpet would be more comfortable than his own bed. "So?" Axel asked with a grin. "What do you think? I try to keep it from getting too gaudy, and I think I restrained myself pretty well. Don't you?" "It's nice," Roxas agreed. "Very you. A lot cleaner than I would have expected." Axel laughed, ruffling Roxas's hair, which caused the blonde to scowl at him in annoyance. "Yeah, I know. If I had it my way, it would never get clean. But those damn maids always break in and clean it all up when I'm not home." Axel shut the door firmly behind him, revealing a large Green Day poster stuck to the back of it, and flicked the lock. Roxas hardly had any time to make a comment on it before Axel was across the room, pushing him gently back until he hit the bed with a soft thump. "Axel?" he questioned breathlessly as the redhead grinned down on him. Roxas licked his lips, his throat going dry and heart beating faster as Axel looked at him as if he were on the hunt. The redhead latched his hands under Roxas's thighs and lifted him onto the bed, sitting him down. The bed was so high off the ground they were almost face to face. His hands came up and cradled Roxas's face, and he leaned forward, their lips meeting in a soft kiss, for about 2 seconds. A trapdoor in the ceiling slammed open, causing them both to jump a mile and spin in the direction of the noise. Reno's head was popped out of the hole, his long red ponytail hanging straight down as he looked at them in upside-down amusement. "I knew it!" he exclaimed excitedly, his head disappearing and a rope ladder appearing in its place. A moment later, he was climbing down and into the room, staring at them with the self-satisfied expression on his face. Roxas had seen the very same look on Axel's face. It was a bit unnerving, really. Axel, on the other hand, looked extremely annoyed. Roxas was still too impressed by the trapdoor in the ceiling to have any other thought process than, wow. "Damn it, Reno," was all Axel could say as Reno approached the pair and poked Axel in the center of his forehead. "I knew he was more than a friend. This is the same kid you've been pining over for years." Axel rolled his eyes, crossing his arms over his chest. "Great job, Reno," he muttered sarcastically. "You're a super sleuth." Roxas was amazed by the other redhead's sudden appearance. "What the hell was that?" he asked, finally gathering his bearings. Axel and Reno exchanged a look before they looked at Roxas. "What, the trapdoor?" they asked at the same time, their voices blending together almost perfectly. Roxas hadn't noticed until that moment that the pair had basically the exact same voice, though Axel's was a little higher. Yeah, Roxas said, a little disoriented by the stereo speech. "Oh, when our rooms were being remodeled, Axel started. "We paid the builder due to put in a trapdoor so our rooms could be connected," Reno finished. "We wanted to be able to see each other whenever we felt the urge, you know? No one else in the house knows it's there." "The dude hit it really well," Reno added. It took Roxas a moment to realize he was swiveling his head between the brothers as they spoke, back and forth as they finished each other's sentences, or spoke a soliloquy between the two of them. It was weird. They were silent for a long moment before something else Reno said surfaced in his mind. "Wait a sec, Ax. What do you mean about you liking me for years? I thought you said you just found out about all this." Axel's eyes widened in panic, but Reno just snorted and kept talking. "Are you kidding? Yeah, the hell right. He's been whining about you to me since what, 7th grade? Yeah, 7th grade. He'd come into my room and be like, 'Oh, Reno, I'm in love with him. What do I do?' I kept telling him to ask you out, because rumor on the street was that you wouldn't mind, but he totally wasn't believing me. He was like, 'No, he can't be, because that would just be too easy, and if I say something, he'll hate me forever, and I can't deal with that because I love him.' But yeah, I definitely told him." "Reno, shut the hell up," Axel growled, clamping a hand over his brother's mouth, quickly releasing, with a look of disgust on his face. "You licked me, you bastard." "Don't restrain my freedom of speech," Reno retorted. "Just because you have the freedom to talk doesn't mean you should." "Are you saying I talk too much?" "That hurts, Ax. It cuts me deep. Right here." Reno placed a hand over his heart, his eyes going wide and looking deceivingly innocent, pouting a bit. Roxas's mind, meanwhile, was reeling. Axel had liked Roxas for years? Axel had already accepted that he was gay? Axel had told him that he wasn't sure. Axel had lied to him. From the very moment they first met, Axel had lied to him? Was it big enough a lie for him to get truly angry, or was it just something stupid that he could easily get over? Axel had lied to get Roxas to kiss him, but then again, Roxas had quite enjoyed kissing him. That little lie had spurred their entire relationship, so could Roxas really be mad at that? It sure did explain a lot. Why Axel had adapted to the thought so quickly, for one. But then again, it didn't explain how none of his friends had known. Maybe he just hadn't come out to anyone except Reno. Roxy, I can explain. I can. Looking at the desperate, panicked look on Axel's face, he couldn't stay angry. Sure, Axel had lied, but it had only been a tiny little lie, and there hadn't been any bad repercussions. Still though, he had questions that needed to be answered. You go ahead and explain, Ax. I'm listening. He leaned back on his hands, watching his boyfriend with a slightly cocked eyebrow. Axel looked as if he wasn't sure whether or not he was in trouble, but then started talking anyway. Well, like Reno said, I sorta kinda liked you for a long time. Since we were 13, Reno piped up, causing Axel to shoot a glare at his brother. Anyway, I was never really sure what to do about it, you know, cause my dad's such a douche, and I was sorta scared to mention it to anyone, so I just didn't. Reno knew, but no one else. Roxas regarded the redheads, Reno looking a mix between amused and a tiny bit guilty, and Axel having the same guilty look written all over his face. Anyway, I just sort of tried to ignore it over the years. I don't really know why. I guess it was just because the longer I delayed, the more I convinced myself that I had became that I thought you would turn me down. He's an emotional train wreck most of the time, Reno informed Roxas, laughing as Axel growled and pushed him away. Then 3 days ago, I walked into detention and there you are. It was like a sign from God or something. I didn't know what else to do, so I called Reno. We sort of had a code set up for when I was talking about you in public, so I used that. Roxas had a fleeting memory of Axel talking about yellow cactuses. If that was a stab at his hair, the brothers would pay. He told me to talk to you, but didn't seem interested, and I panicked, so I lied. That night I called Dimix and told him, and the next day I came out to the rest of my friends. Roxas didn't move, watching Axel. The redhead didn't appear to have anything else to say, and Reno was watching the both of them as they were as if they were in a particularly interesting soap opera. Finally, Roxas lifted his shoulders in a shrug. Hey, whatever works, he said nonchalantly. Axel grinned, looking a lot more confident in himself until Roxas held up one finger in a signal to wait a moment. On the other hand, if you ever lie to me again, I won't be so forgiving. Axel nodded to show he understood before leaning in and kissing Roxas once more. Roxas was slightly aware that Reno was standing right there, but he tried to ignore it. It worked pretty well too. That is, until Reno started talking. Christ, Axel, spare me, would you? I mean, yeah, we're twins, but that doesn't mean we have to share everything. Axel growled slightly before pulling away and glaring at Reno. Go away then. Wait, you guys are twins? Axel and Reno both looked at Roxas as if he was an idiot. Yeah. I thought it was kinda obvious, Reno added. Well, I don't know. No one told me, so I guess I thought you both just had a lot in common. They both snorted and rolled their eyes. You're weird, Reno informed him with a little grin. Having no reply to that, Roxas just waved his hand in a what can you do gesture. Axel jumped as a buzzing noise sounded and fished his cell phone out of his pocket. He flipped it open, eyes darting across the screen. My mom says I have to take you home now, Rox. You ready? Roxas nodded, cocking an eyebrow. Your mom texts you? Yeah, Axel answered as if he thought it was a strange question. Roxas just shook his head. They were definitely from different worlds. Roxas bid Reno goodbye, the redhead promptly disappearing up the ladder, and they set off back downstairs. Roxas tried to memorize the path to Axel's room, but somewhere around the 10th turn, he forgot. He quickly concluded that he should never explore the house by himself, lest he be lost for the rest of his life. The ride back to Roxas's house was a quiet one, the only noise coming from the radio, which was turned to a low volume. Roxas was slumped in his seat, his forehead resting against the window, watching the street flash by quickly. I'm sorry about my family, Rox. I know you'll understand when I complain about them, right? Axel asked half-heartedly as they pulled up in front of Roxas's house. Roxas laughed and smiled at his boyfriend. Yeah, there's the bright side. He reached for the door handle, but Axel's hand on his arm made him stop. The redhead reached into a small storage space behind his seat and handed Roxas a small plastic bag. Peering inside, he saw tinfoil. Axel must have caught his confused expression, because he said quietly, "It's the leftovers from dinner. I figured you could give to Leon." Roxas' heart seized and he looked up at his boyfriend, just wanting to hug him instead. He said, "Oh, you're so sweet." Axel laughed and waved his hand dismissively. "Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation." Roxas leaned against the center console of the car and kissed Axel sweetly. "Thank you," he said, allowing Axel to kiss him once more before getting out of the car. He was more surprised when Axel got out of the car as well, coming with him up to the front door and inside when Roxas unlocked the door. Trying to keep from even thinking mushy thoughts, Roxas set off to find Leon. He located his brother at the kitchen table sorting through a pile of bills. He sighed, knowing that despite Axel's help, things would just continue to go downhill for them. He set the bag on the table next to Leon, heading to the cupboard to grab a glass for some water. "What's this?" Leon asked distractedly, looking at the bag. "Oh, that's some leftovers from dinner at Axel's. He got the maid to wrap some up for you," Roxas explained. Axel flushed slightly, running a hand through his hair as if embarrassed. "Oh, thanks. Thanks so much." Leon looked slightly surprised, but cleared the bills out of the way and pulled out the food. Roxas handed his brother some silverware, turning to look at Axel as the brunette dug in, trying not to look too eager. Roxas wondered how long it had been since he had last eaten something. Roxas was frowning at his cell phone, and then he typed something in. The frown deepened. Axel was frowning at his cell phone, and then typed something in. The frown deepened and he sighed, shutting the phone and shoving it in his pocket. "What's wrong?" Roxas asked in concern. "Oh, that was Reno. He was warning me to not come home tonight. Apparently things aren't too good there right now. My parents, you know." Roxas nodded in understanding, and even Leon looked up from his food, his gray eyes studying Axel for a long moment. The blonde momentarily wondered if it had anything to do with him being there that night before deciding he was far too self-absorbed for his own good. "You want to stay here?" Roxas asked. Axel's eyes glinted for a moment, but it disappeared instantly when Leon's head snapped up again. "That's alright, isn't it?" Roxas added as an afterthought. Leon stared at Roxas as if he were stupid. "I don't know, Rox. Something tells me it's a bad idea to let two hormone-driven teenagers in a relationship sleep in the same room." Roxas rolled his eyes, crossing his arms over his chest. "Please, Squall, I share a room with Sora. What could we possibly do?" Leon seemed to realize the sense in this, so he nodded. "Yeah, alright, fine. Just don't do anything I would kill you for." Roxas saluted him sarcastically before turning back to Axel. "So?" he asked the redhead. Axel grinned and nodded. "Thanks a lot, Rox, and Leon." Roxas slept that night curled up in Axel's arms, lulled to sleep by the smell of wood smoke and the sound of deep breaths in his ear.